Hello, everyone. It's Samantha again here on Embracing the Divine Feminine. And I wanted to get back in today because we're going to talk about expectations. Like I say, Embracing the Divine Feminine is all about the journey that I've gone through and the steps that I've gone through to basically get through my trauma, understand, what it's like to live in this world and see different points of views that I didn't understand before because I grew up in a small town and I didn't understand a lot of these things. So I've been curious about growth, and I've always been interested in growth, and I'm not okay just to stay the way I am. So now, last week we talked about judgments, so that is a big deal, right? We've already talked about that. So next is expectations. Now, I found that this came up for me quite a bit. It was woven into my life, and I kind of believe it came from family. Now, one thing that comes to mind, especially for me, is birthdays. So my mom really was big on you only get one day a year. That is for you. It's special. You should take a day off and you should celebrate and have a good time, And I loved that. As a kid, she would let me call out of school if I wanted to. We would go to lunch. It was really fun. And then so I kind of grew up with that. I didn't necessarily have any kids' birthday parties, though. I think back, I don't think I ever had like any friends come to my house for a birthday party. Now, I know all of my neighbors did, and friends, of course, always had birthday parties, but I really didn't. And I don't know, I didn't really think that much about it until recently, actually. And it could be because my dad's birthday is the day before mine, and so we always celebrated and we always had a family get together, and that was perfectly fine. I thought it was great. I loved my family, and we did do a lot of things together. So anyway, but where that leads into my life is, I guess there were kind of hopes and dreams, and it could be people, behaviors that kind of set that expectation. So here's an example. So say your boyfriend or your husband like really knocks it out of the park, like on one of your birthdays, especially like when you're courting, okay? The surprises are rolling in, like they're really excited about it. And sometimes that can change as you get older. So say he knocks it out of the park this one time. Well, okay, we kind of have expectations that it's always going to be like that. Okay. And then I found that I would have hopes also. And honestly, if you think about it, how can anybody know what your expectations are? There's no way they can know what your expectations are unless you're telling them what you love, what you hope for, what you wish for, what you dream about, all of these things. This is what cues people into understanding what's important to you. Now, whether they do it or not, that's a different story. But there's all kinds of different expectations. This is one that leads to disappointment over and over again, okay? And I've felt it in my life. It was a big cycle that I would go into around my birthday. And I think it had to do with this where, I was feeling special. That's my special day, all of these things. And I've even found this in my current relationship because the way he was raised was totally different. So he sees his birthday as just another day and it's no big deal. And I feel like we should be having some big events. I should be going on these big trips. And so what I started doing, because of this, one, I became more vocal about not expectations necessarily, but more about what I like to do, what I'm hoping to do. I have had things, like on one particular year, I was taken fishing for my birthday, and that's because I didn't stand up, right? I don't mind going fishing, but that is not what I would normally do on my birthday. So, as I've gotten older and I've worked through this thing about thinking that everybody's a mind reader and that they're going to know what I want and what I need, it's just simply not true. And so I ended up being disappointed so much in my lifetime just over this one particular thing. So I think it's super important to really think about expectations and where are you putting expectations on people or yourself. You can have really high expectations of yourself and really burn yourself out. So that is the potential as well. But this is the main one that pops into mind for me, and I've ended up with a lot of disappointment, like I say. Not that it's anyone's fault, really, it's just a learning process. And so, what I did learn was to be vocal. So, when there's something that I really would like to do, whether it's for my birthday or for anything, I always throw it out to my group of people. So it could be my partner, it could be my kids, it could be my family, friends. And I'll say, okay, look, guys, this is what I want to do. Who wants to go? So, right, I'll always start with my closest people first, which would be my partner or my kids. Then after that, I go to my friends. Hey, I really want to do this. Does anybody want to go with me? And what I found was that some people didn't want to go to these certain things, but I knew I wanted to go and I was going to make it happen. So I went to my partner. I said, okay, these are the three things I want to do that are coming to town because I live in Phoenix and there's a lot of things to do around here. So I said, okay, I would like to go here and this activity. And he said, okay, well, I like that one. And so what it did is it took the pressure off. So like I knew I could go have fun with him in that instance and that he would be open to that. And so the other two things, I went to a friend and I said, hey, do you want to go to this hot air balloon thing with me? And she did. And, but he didn't want to go to that. So what I found is I'm more open to saying what I want. I'm not secretly hoping and expecting people to do these things because I've just found there's too much disappointment in it and I don't want to live my life that way anymore. I'm going to be vocal and I'm going to state, what's important to me and what I want. So the biggest thing that comes to mind in me really putting all of this together was a couple years ago on my birthday. I had wanted to go to Egypt for a really, really long time, and I waited. I watched my friend. She was like the group leader, and she's a shaman. She's really amazing. Anyway, so I watched her going because she, excuse me, had just started going. And so I was watching her, and I'd chime in. I'd be like, "Hey, I'm gonna make sure that I come on this trip one time." And so one year she had been doing it for 2 years and then she threw an offer out there that I couldn't refuse. It was absolutely amazing and I signed up. I did that for myself for my birthday. Okay, it was that important to me. Did I come home and everyone thought I was crazy. There was a war going on, they were bombing Russia and that's like 700 miles away. I mean, that's a whole different story, but I told everyone and I wanted to go. I didn't know how I was going to make that happen financially, even. I made payments. But also, I have done this before when I really wanted to do things and I didn't have the finances to do it. I would go and help people out. So whatever they needed, did somebody need house cleaning? Did they need window cleaning? Did they need a grocery run? What did they need? Just to pick up these little things to be able to make that trip. And I did it. And it's really so rewarding. I really had to fight a lot to make that trip happen. A lot had to do with the bombings and stuff that were going on in Russia. But I did make it there. There are only three of us that went out of 11, and what a magical, magical experience. I got to go in the pyramid and do a meditation in the king's chamber and get in the sarcophagus, I think that's what they call, or the tomb, the big thing, where I guess Jesus came through there. So it was really cool. I got to go see a church that Jesus hid out in when he was a baby, and it was so amazing. So that's what I'm saying. And all of this came from my internal dialogue of expectations, of having expectations of other people doing things for me. Excuse me, my throat is itchy. So anyway, so I have started that. That's only actually been 2 years ago is when I went to Egypt. And so as you can tell, when we start having these discussions in our head, because it would send me into such a deep sadness and feeling like such a victim and all of these things. And I didn't think, I knew that wasn't right, but it was this behavior that had been basically implanted, which was a special thing. I even raised my kids that way, that their birthdays are special. So hopefully they're not going to run into these disappointments. But I guess the big teaching here is to really reflect on how you are with your partners, with your family, and with what you would really like to do instead of having those expectations, right? Even expectations, putting an expectation on people, I have found does not work, especially with the men that I have been with. It seems more like if I tell them what I want and I put an expectation on it, then they almost resent it. So there's like this really fine line of how you want to describe what you want to do. But it's really important if you find yourself running into these things, like you had just hoped this would happen, or, you would really like to say, go to your nicest dinner and you're hoping that happens. Well, you need to state it. You need to say what is important to you and understand that people aren't mind readers. And, maybe I'm the only one that deals with this or has dealt with this, but I don't think so. I had experienced so much disappointment over this that I finally took control and just said, no more, no more. If there are things that I would like to do, I will do it. I will be, one, open to tell everyone that I'm doing it or what I'm not doing. The second one would be to start planning and, start doing my research on it, throwing it out there to whoever would like to come. And guess what? If nobody wants to come, I was going solo to Egypt. I flew all the way to Egypt alone. And people were freaking out about that. But I knew I was going to meet up with my group. It all works out. So that's the big thing. If there is something in your heart that you want to do that is important to you, do not wait around and do not expect people to know. If you're not telling anybody, how are they going to know that that is important to you? So if travel is big on your list or, whatever, there are ways to make these things happen, especially being not a single woman, but traveling as a single woman. You want to take certain things into consideration. I know you're not just going to, hop on a flight and go to Egypt, just and not have plans and not know anything. Doesn't make any sense, right? So it takes planning. And here's another thing is that I knew I was going to be safe. I knew the leader. I knew that we were going to have armed guards at times. I knew our plan, right? I had done all of the research to know that I was safe and that I knew I would be safe when I got there. And believe me, it is freaky when you get off the plane and all the signs are in a foreign language. Okay, I know there's a ton of people that deal with this, of course, but for me, it was a first experience to go somewhere that I had to rely on other people to get me around. And it all worked out. It was absolutely ended up being a wonderful trip. You know, I've done the same thing in India last year. And so I am finding that by putting my expectations out there, and they're not really expectations, it's just things that I would like to do, right? Now, if I would have secretly been expecting it, that's a little different, but I have learned from the mistakes that I've made that it is worth it to state what you would like to do. So that's what we're going to talk about, expectations. I will be back here, in a couple days. I would love to see where you guys have expectations on things. And if you do, I don't know. This is just something that I realized I was doing, and not consciously. It was a subconscious thing. That I just secretly hoped and longed for these things as I grew up and in my adult relationships, and not fully understanding that I just needed to put it out there. So I've been actually pretty good about putting it out there now. And so whatever's important to me, I will make sure it happens one way or another. And I hope you're doing the same. So anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on expectations and see if you run into the same thing, or if you have in your lifetime, and maybe what your trigger is. But that was mine. Like I say, was my birthday, and because I really go out of my way, probably because it's important to me, right, to make other people feel special on their birthday. And, we have to understand that other people are raised other ways, and it's not always going to just lock into place like that, right? So relationships can be very good. And, if I would have stuffed that, clearly I stuffed those feelings for a long time because I kept ending up being disappointed. And I had to face that and come to the conclusion, like, where is this coming from? And it was me. It was here. It was here. And so once I realized it and worked through it, boy, is my life so much better. So anyway, I will check in a couple days. I hope to hear from you guys, and I'll add a little more on this and see what comes to me over the week. So have a good weekend. Much love. Bye.